All right. All right then, folks. Hope you're doing well. I'm just going to give a few minutes before we get settled in and ready for tonight. Amazing to connect with you today. Hope you're all doing well. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat, and if anyone wants to post any questions at any point, then just pop those in the chat. You do need to be subscribed to the YouTube channel for that. So just if anyone is feeling helpful, then pop in the chat that you can hear me and see me all okay. That would be really helpful for me. All right, nearly 7 o'clock, and we'll get started in a moment. So sit tight. Should be probably talking for about 30-40 minutes or so, and love to answer any questions you've got about applied practice. That's kind of the mission, really. That's why I want to do these sorts of things. So I'm going to assume that you can hear me okay. If anyone is feeling helpful, before I start going to a bit of a rant and sharing my thoughts, that someone's checking that you can hear me all right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Co-Wheat Tech. Amazing. All right. Let's get into tonight. So a very warm welcome to this Supporting Champions webinar. My name's Steve Ingham, and is it arrogant for me to have said, how to be an excellent sports scientist? Maybe that's assuming that I know it all, or that I know how to do that. Well, in many ways, this is a series of events, pieces of content, courses, blogs, podcasts that we really want to put a big focus on creating more knowledge, more expertise, more focus on great applied practice. And so what I'd like you to do is as we're going through tonight, I'm going to go and share 10 different ideas that I think are important. And so that's me putting my ideas forward for you. Maybe as we go through these, I'm going to number them for you. As we go through this, why don't you give yourself a bit of a score, just a gut feeling of how well do I do that? And I'm pretty sure if you're doing all of these above average, then and some of them are not easy, and it'd be interesting to know which one you find harder than others. Some of them you'll think, yeah, I do that. I know that. I do that really well. And others, it might be, oh yeah, I avoid that. And so maybe give yourself a bit of a score, because if anything from tonight, maybe you could get a sense of what do I do well and what areas could I actually improve upon, because that's the way that you'd approach your work with athletes. And why wouldn't we do that with ourselves too? So give yourself a bit of a score. And yeah, I wrote these not necessarily thinking I'm amazing at all of these, but knowing that all the people that I've worked with over the time that I've worked in applied sport is that actually some people do this brilliantly. Some people do this much better than I do. So let's get into today's session. What should you expect from today? This is a quick intro from me. 10 high priority skills. So this is going to be a bit of a whistle stop tour. And so I'm going to go through these relatively quickly, but try and give you a couple of examples to bring the content to life as we go. And I'm going to give you a few instances of where, if you don't do these, this could cripple your career. And if you do these well, actually this could advance your career. And if there's a Q&A at the end, I'd love to get into any questions. I'll certainly keep that window open and answer any questions that you've got from tonight. So get those ready, but don't forget that if you want to ask a question, then you have to be subscribed to the YouTube channel. So that's just that requirement. So a mini intro to me. I've worked in elite sport since 1996 as a sports scientist, working with various different elite athletes. Jessica Ennis-Hill, pictured on screen there, pinnacle of London 2012. But working with Olympic champions throughout my career, and that's through institute systems. So I was at the British Olympic Association, English Institute of Sport. I now consult around the world with various different institute systems. And so I can sort of see a bit of a difference between how people approach things in different environments and what different systems do well and which ones don't. I consult with a number of Premiership, rugby and football operations over the years. And so here's an athlete that I'm working with at the moment, a football player working away. This is David Brooks, who plays for Bournemouth Football Club. He's a Welsh international. And I've been supporting him for the last 12 months, returning him back to play after his cancer diagnosis 18 months ago. And so that's really intricate, detailed, quite careful work about returning somebody full health to the demands of elite sport. So I'm still involved with athletes and players and clubs and coaches these days. And so it would be interesting as we get into tonight as to what's your focus. And if you're performance analyst working in, say, South Africa, if you're a physiotherapist, say, working in the Middle East, if you are a nutritionist working in South America, or a psychologist working in Europe, tell me in the chat, if you can, whereabouts your focus is at the moment. Because what I'm pitching for tonight is that the 10 principles that I'll share with you are independent of what career you might go for. If you want to be a physiologist, nutritionist, psychologist, strength and conditioning coach, whatever, I think these qualities are ubiquitous to what you want to do and how you want to work, and for you to be doing this really well. And I should say that we do run applied online courses. Some of you I know who are dialed in, I've recognised your name from in our community. And I do have a specific discount code. We've got some discount offers going on for courses over the next couple of weeks. But actually the biggest one that I've got on offer is available tonight, and that's going to be a discount code of £100 off the applied courses. So if that's of interest to you, hang around and I'll share that with you at the end. Part of what I'm going to share with you is informed by hiring and firing. So over the years, having seen thousands of CVs, hundreds of people that interview, the people that continue to succeed and the people that perhaps just fall short, or that we've had to actually remove from a sports team environment if you don't do things particularly well. But really, this is informed tonight about those people that do things brilliantly, not necessarily the ones that mess up so much, but do things brilliantly. And it's a collation of that into those principles. And like I say, the focus really is so many different ways in which you could work, but these are core principles. And so whether it's strength conditioning, whether it's nutrition, whether it's psychology, physiology, performance analysis, ergonomics, skill acquisition, those bullet pointed ones on screen are the ones that I'm going to put a slightly greater focus on. I'm not going to speak on behalf of medicine, performance lifestyle, physiotherapy tonight, because they do have some, I guess, elements that are non-scientific in certain ways. They're about therapy or treatments or pastoral support. And this is probably why I'm interested in developing this, because there are so many nuances. And if you look at the athlete physical, mental makeup, the coach's experience, the training background, and all of the things that then map and determine the characteristics that you might consider for that simple single decision every day, that yellow fulcrum on screen, that bit is the crux of what we do in this work. We are supporting the coaches and the athletes to make quality decisions as to what are we going to do today. And with that in mind, the skills that I think surface for us to enhance the quality of that decision making are, there's 10 of those, I think. So that's what I'm going to get into today. So get your pen and paper ready, or if not, just sit back and soak this up. But try and keep an eye on, do I do that well or do I not do that so well? All right, first one. The first one goes without saying to a certain extent, is that you do need to know your stuff, and you need to have a level of technical, logical, mathematical ability that you have studied to a certain level, so that you have a grasp on your fundamental area of expertise. And this is something I've seen some practitioners actually do okay in their careers, do all right, without necessarily having a good technical knowledge. But if you're aspiring to be great, then you're probably going to be thinking about two versions of knowledge. And it's the T-based practitioner versus the I-based practitioner. The I-based practitioner are narrow and deep. And so this is a sense of, right, this is my thing, this is what I do, and I don't necessarily have reach across the different spectrum of things that I might need to talk to an athlete about. A T-based practitioner has depth and breadth. So I have specific depth of expertise in certain areas, but I think probably more than anything, I have breadth of knowledge. And I take pride in the fact that if you want to be an applied sports scientist, you need to be a specialist generalist, so that you specialise in being a generalist. So this is interesting because generalist sounds like non-expert, but actually my expertise is performance. And if I'm sat with an athlete and a coach, I might encounter 20 different topics in a single conversation. And so I'm going to need to offer them some value across the board. And so I put this in different ways. The technical sort of Einstein ability, the ability to grasp high-level biological, mathematical arguments. And the FONS, really the emotional ability to work with people and facilitate group productivity. You also need a philosophical standpoint, so you can see the bigger picture as to what you're doing and prioritize your work accordingly. And at the same time, bigger picture, and you've got a grasp on the detail. You have detail on the task. And so this is a stretch to know your stuff in different directions. So that's our first one, right off the bat here. Know your stuff. And the problem that we're solving for here is that performance support is multi-dimensional and requiring breadth of expertise. And that's based on the infinite number of unique circumstances that you're going to encounter in work. And specialist knowledge is a bit like, you've got that problem, well, I've got this hammer, and that's the only thing I'm going to work on. I remember interviewing one person for a triathlon position, and all they thought that the triathletes needed to do was take beta-alanine. And, there's training, there's there's logistics, there's transition practice, there's so much that an athlete in triathlon needs to do. It's not going to be all solved by beta-alanine. And so that was them being an I-based practitioner. Right, number 2 is being clear on who you work for and with. Now, I hope to a certain extent, some of you are thinking, what? What do you mean? As in, who pays for me? Well, that's this is probably illustrated best by the pull between players or athletes and coaches. Who do you work for? Now, I ask practitioners a lot of the time, who is it that you work for? Who is your priority of focus? And they'll talk about the athletes and the players. And then they'll talk about trying to influence the coaches. And which is the one? Now, here's a couple of questions to kind of illustrate this. Who do you work with most day to day? Who sets the direction of your work? Who, if they were to complain, is most likely to lead you being fired? So, and who then are the key personnel to engage with, and how are you going to influence those people? And so if you think about it from that order, probably if you're weighing up an understanding of athlete or coach as the person I work for, it's probably the coach. It could be a line manager, but probably if you're reporting and supporting to a coach, then that's probably the focus of your work. Often I see practitioners getting super close to athletes and players, and then it can annoy the coach. And the players and the athletes move on, they retire or they get transferred, and then the coach remains. And so be quite clear, who's the boss here? Who do I need to make sure I'm in their pocket and on their side? So I don't have the answer necessarily, but I often see the problem here is that people can lose sight of they're really working for. And if you do that, I think you'll lose impact. Right, number 3, everything that you do has to be from a basis of trust. And certainly when we've spent time with sporting directors, performance directors, head coaches, and they're saying, well, I'm saying, what do you want from a good quality applied sports scientist? And they say, we want someone who just gets it. And it's quite a vague term. Sorry, it's a bit annoying. They just get it. We hear this time and time again. And I say, okay, well, what does that mean? Tell us, give us a little bit more description. And when we've asked, this is like, this continues to have the same priority professional skills. The number one thing that comes out is character and attitude. And if you ask, what are the characteristics of character and attitude? Trust and rapport comes out at the top. Initiative and proactivity and adaptability come out below, because character and attitude are determined by those. But trust and rapport is the biggest determinant of your success. And so if you were to get sophisticated in the same way that you might break down swimming performance, if you're a performance analyst, or you might think about fueling at different times for different scenarios, why are we not thinking about determinants of trust in the same way that we might do? So rapport, dependability, integrity, and showing consistency, being able to deliver, co-supporting, active listening, empathy, being present, honesty and integrity, managing ourselves in the moment so that we actually turn up and we are a reliable supporting service. Why aren't we breaking our work down to be able to do this? I don't know, actually. I just think it's probably because it's more emotional than it is necessarily tangible, because we can't plot it in Excel or Tableau. And so focus on trust as every day so that you can make a difference. And I think the problem here is that we have a tendency, probably as a dint of our education system, that treats us in a certain way to recite knowledge. We have a tendency to focus on the what, because it's cold and objective, and we forget the how because it's emotional or dynamic and we can't measure it. But trust is the fulcrum. Trust is the fulcrum for everything you do that's meaningful. And I'm going to stretch you a little bit in a few moments about some other ideas where it might be harder to create meaningful work, but you can only do that if you're working on the basis of a trust. Right, number 4, be clear on what you are working towards. Okay, so I've just made the case for trust and how we work, our craft skills, but what are you working on? So this is my 6-word sports science degree, master's degree, PhD, and I think this applies to all different disciplines. So what determines success in the physiology or the performance analysis or the psychology of your event? How do you move those characteristics? If we found that speed over the first 5 meters is deterministic for a player's ability, how do we then adapt that? And then how do we perform it on the day? And so across the different disciplines, you should have an understanding of what truly determines performance. And this is the difference between you asking, what should I work on today, versus actually, I know what I should be working on today. And so there's a difference there between the two. And here, the problem that you're solving for is that scientists can have a tendency to drift towards pet projects, maybe low risk, small new ideas that have been published, and promoting some of those ideas. But often they might be pitched because they don't really fundamentally create big, meaningful change. So change can be hard for coaches and athletes to adopt and take on. And so if you have a very clear idea, for me, this has been one of the most challenging areas, when you know the thing that you think is important is not important for sporting success. And I'm going to have to try and broach that with you. I'd actually rather pitch some small ideas to you that you're not that bothered on. But this one might rock your boat. So number 5, understand how you can create and change adaptation. So we've got a fundamental idea of those determinants of performance. And what we want to do is have an idea of how we can change and adapt to those areas. And so think about what work you're focused on over the last few days, or last week or month or so, and think, are we making any changes with this? Do I know how to make changes for this? What's the evidence base for this? Can this actually change? And it's something I see all the time, and I illustrate this figure in How to Support Champion. But some concepts and factors can have the capability to increase. So imagine a tree growing in a greenhouse, a bit of a strange, maybe a plant growing in a greenhouse, and there's a ceiling, and so it can grow, and it has the capacity to adapt. Sometimes you need to change the ceiling. Sometimes you need to be thinking or looking for areas that have got greater capacity. So I do look for, I do sometimes hear from sports scientists about highlighting factors that they can't actually change. And that's sort of interesting, maybe in a talent ID or selection process, but it's not necessarily that useful if you haven't got a mechanism of changing it. And I would say that performance scientists probably need to do a little bit more around the standard deviation of what the work that they're doing, rather than taking the averages. And I illustrate this point with, this is a live high, train low, hypoxic exposure, 4 weeks worth of endurance training, some in all in hypoxia before and after. And what you can see here is that this is changes in hemoglobin, so blood qualities if you're not a physiologist. And what you can see is that some people respond well, and they've got an increase in blood properties, and some people don't. They actually get worse, and some people stay the same. And this is why, for altitude training, people say, oh, well, there's responders and non-responders. What we've got here is one route to, oh, let's not bother. And we've got another route to, why are some people improving and why are some people not? And this is at the heart of finding ways in which you can provoke change and adaptation for athletes and players. Don't just settle for, oh, it's not responding. Start getting curious about why and how could we. This is also really important, and so this is a work of Lambert in 1992, and from the psychology field. I've stolen this from the applied psychology course, actually. It was a gem in there that Rebecca Levitt highlighted. And so this was what contributory factors from the patients did they cite as being the most influential and to the success of the psychology support that they received from a therapist. And so you might think, oh, well, it's probably down to a certain technique like CBT or mindfulness. Well, it wasn't to do with the model or the technique. It was a very small contribution. There's placebo and hope and expectancy. Most of it came from how ready the person was to change and the patient-therapist relationship. So it wasn't down to necessarily what you did, it's how much trust they put in you as a practitioner. Now, we could just think, okay, great, well, that just sounds like a souped-up placebo, but just fundamentally, you've got to recognize that a lot of what you do is putting good quality ideas in front of people, but if they don't trust you, if they don't have a good basis of relationship, then you're unlikely to be able to actually adapt them and actually improve them. The problem you're solving for here is that if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And that speaks to what the coaches have too. But change is hard. If you're really going for it, if you're trying to improve big determinants of performance, then it's probably going to be quite questioning for a coach and an athlete. They might have to change the way that they train, and that's going to be hard for you as a practitioner to be able to pitch. Right, so number 5 is about adding quality to your processes. And so this is fundamentally probably at the heart of where I see a deterioration in applied sports scientists. It's actually one of the motivations for me putting this webinar on today. It's on the motivations of me hosting a podcast and writing blogs about this and creating courses for this, is that what I often see is that people are doing rubbish work. And it sounds a bit harsh, but the work that they're doing isn't good enough. It isn't really great work. If you're here today to want to be an excellent applied scientist, then you have to be thinking about putting great ideas, great questions in front of your coaches. Because if you're just doing sort of mundane analysis and not really producing anything great, then that's going to limit you. So the 3 kind of key areas here that you should be thinking about. So firstly is, are you undertaking work that has relevance for the most important ideas? And so remember those determinants of performance. So are you working towards those? So this is not marginal gains, this is massive gains. Are you working on meaningfulness? The second is, are you generating information that can be acted upon? So this is about how actionable some of your work is. So how well can I receive this information? Is it digestible? Has it pitched in the right way? Are these questions that you're asking coaches leading to a change that they could create? Because sometimes it's easy just to ask vague questions and it just be sort of diffuse, but actually is it actionable? And are the statements, are the questions that you're working on something that can actually be proved wrong? And so is it something that's falsifiable? And so this is about the quality of your questions. Sian Allen had a great one in her performance analysis course, and it was about she was doing some tracking of athlete performances post-Olympics, and her question coming back from the coaches is, I wonder if we competed a little bit more earlier in the season, whether we would have peaked more for the Olympic Games. And she was able to rephrase that for the coach to say, let's test to see if those athletes that competed earlier performed better. So it's a testable hypothesis. So look, sports scientists, you can have a tendency to do meaningless work and drift into crunching GPS numbers for no reason. But if you're a scientist, be scientific and be scrutinizing the questions that you're asking the coach so that you can get closer to meaningful work. Number 6 is having an ethical framework for your work. Now, if you're head down, thinking short term, I'm just surviving day to day, this might not be on your radar. I'll put it this way. There is advanced work and there's basic work that you can be engaged in. And 2 different axes here. Another one that's functional and another one that's fundamental. So your fundamental basics will be the processes that you need to go through. That could be calibrating machines, it could be setting up procedures, it could be number crunching. The legalities are the advanced level of the fundamentals, and I'll share with you an example in a moment. The basics, the functional basics, could be crunching numbers and getting some insight, and it's only really the top quadrant where your advanced and functional work is about impact. And really, if you're not doing the advanced fundamental basics or basic functional basics, you're not really going to be able to create impact. So you have to do the basics brilliantly in order for you to do the advanced work. So I'll give you a few examples. So fundamental basics is all about providing safe and quality assured support where the athlete and coach are informed about all aspects. So the what, the why, the when, the where, the why. The legalities, so this is about supporting the athlete and coach to make informed choices to develop sporting capability. and enabling them to choose science and ethical practice while understanding performance risks. Records of data discussions are kept. And so this is where I've seen people drifting from, now we're doing ethical work, we're supporting people through scientific processes, and it's drifted very close to the legal line as to what would be acceptable in the fair play rules, doping rules, for example. And so getting close to that, I think, is okay, but not crossing that line. And when I've seen people who've crossed the line, it's because they haven't done those advanced fundamentals. So insights would be assessment of training and performance, and then impact is where you really get to assist the development of training and performance. But this is about you making sure you've got an ethical framework and reference point as to, is this work going to make me proud? Can I stand up in front of a panel of my peers if I was questioned about my work, and would it be okay? So good people do dodgy work because they don't just suddenly leap to turning into some monster, but they do it because they incrementally lose sight of doing the basics really well. So the basics done well are the basis of impact. Number 8 is to know how you communicate. So thinking about how you communicate for impact. And I've got a couple of different examples here to illustrate the point. When I was working with rowing team in Britain, that's Oxbridge founded, that I'm going to be in front of people who have a deep and rich and extensive educational basis. Not necessarily the brightest, but they know how to think. They are critical thinkers, and they have performed through their examinations. So they're an educated group. When I was working with boxing, I worked with people who were not necessarily schooling. They had been part of travelling communities. They hadn't engaged in formal education. Some of them couldn't read and write. And I'm not casting aspersions here about different fields, but it is a truism that you have to have the flex, the ability to be able to talk to different types of groups, extend your scientific discussions if you need to, or actually make this translatable to somebody who doesn't understand your field. The picture in the middle illustrates perhaps this most starkly when I was leading science operation in England, and I was asked to review the work of a performance analyst. And the performance analyst asked me what I thought of their report. They'd produced this nicely presented, colourful, well-labelled graph report. And I said, okay, so what is this about? And this is about the fight qualities of the judo players I'm working with. And I said, well, tell me a bit about the group that you're working with. Well, it's the visually impaired group. And I said, so you've printed off a report that you're going to give to them. How's that going to go down unless that's in Braille? And it's thinking about not necessarily this is the way I produce information, and so there you go, that's the way I do it. It's thinking about landing that message and making sure it sticks with that person. So communication, the word means, it comes from the word commune. So that is about actually sharing your experience. So besides writing techniques, which I think we get good at as we go through our scientific education, writing techniques, maybe analysis techniques to communicate, that's I think such a small percentage of what we do when we're working with athletes, players, coaches. I think actually you should probably be just as skilled in creating analogies, metaphors, stories, so that you're able to transmit in more persuasive and influential terms. So for me as a physiologist, I might translate the idea of a bloodstream transferring from a heart all the way down to the muscle. It's a bit like a train. The oxygen are like the passengers. They jump on the train and they transported down to where they want to go, and they get off at the working muscle. And you need to get a strong train to be able to deliver that oxygen to those passengers. metaphors and stories. Stories, I think, are so powerful because it creates actually a matching of our brain's nervous system. When people hear stories, they resonate at the same level. I'm just saying, well, when we used to work with this athlete, they struggled, say, for example, at the end of a match, they started to fatigue, um, and they got really frustrated with that. And so we talked about what their options might be, and then we started to fuel them slightly differently. And what happened was we actually noticed that their GPS figures really increased. Now, it's not a bedtime story, but there's a problem, there's an intervention, and then there's a resolution. And that's what stories are all about. And so those communication techniques really will advance your practice. So too many scientists speak in riddles. They present graphics when few words will do. And so I want to be ambitious for you, to aspire to you to land your message, not to show off your technical lingo. And so it's not about display. It's not a scientific conference that you're working at every day. It's about making meaningful difference for people. And part of this is that I think the cut and thrust of working in teams is number 9. You can have a difficult conversation and for it to go well. And the reason for this is that in high performance, rarely do you find people just sat on their hands and thinking, oh, we'll just keep things comfortable. People tend to be forward-thinking, motivated, passionate, knowledgeable, and so they are going to see things differently because of their professional training, because of their personality, because of their education, their experience, whatever it might be. And so you are likely to have differences. I see this injury this way. I think they should be doing this. Well, I'm going to see it differently because I see it from a movement technique versus a training technique versus a strength versus a therapy. You're going to see things differently. One of the other characteristics when we ask practitioners, when I ask performance staff, performance leaders, what are you looking for? They are asking for these qualities about teamship, developing and maintaining working relationships, working constructively to a common goal. So we've got our differences, but we're also then going to focus on resolving those differences to that common goal and dealing with conflict. You should be getting challenge in teams. If you're going home just going, no, disagreements again, no, it's 2 years now without a crossword, it's probably not really a high-performing team. So Daniel Goldman did this foundational work, and he found that this is in the tech sector and banking, across the different industries. He found that the technical skills, so your scientific skills, actually contributed only 1/3 to your overall performance. And your non-technical skills, dealing with conflict and difficulty, emotional situations, your emotional intelligence, be able to read somebody and think, I don't think that went down that well, I'm going to adapt and I'm going to change, was a far bigger contributor. So good people, good, passionate, motivated, intelligent people are going to see things differently in your team. And so great team members will value that and have a degree of tolerance between people so they can work it out and get moving to that common goal. Right, last up is that you are working in a way that you will positively influence others over the long term. And so this is perhaps one of the biggest gifts that you can have in your career, is to be able to learn from somebody. And so if you're thinking about the quality of your work day to day, that you should be trying to transmit that to other people. And what I'm talking about here is the journey. So I've mentioned 10 different qualities. If you're thinking, one day I will write this up, whether that's a case study or a narrative or a blog piece about the work that I've done over 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, I'm going to write this up, then it should pass all of the tests that we've talked about. I should be investing in my technical knowledge. I should be focused on who I'm working for, investing in trust, being clear on what I'm working towards, actually moving things forward and developing areas, adding quality to the processes, having ethics that guide me and my values, knowing how to communicate, dealing with difficult conversations, and ultimately, this is a bit philosophical. I don't want to get too emotional for you today, but will your work pass the rocking chair test, which is the stuff I'm doing today something I can look back on when I'm 80, 85, and I'm in a rocking chair and I'm thinking about my work now? And if it isn't, you're probably not doing work that equates to being an excellent applied sports scientist. Now, there are going to be some bits and pieces you're going to have to do. Just think, oh, this is admin or something. But when you get that permission to actually do meaningful work, it should pass the rocking chair test. And here the problem we're solving for is that short-termism, shortcuts, they can get you ahead really quickly, or they can keep the wolf from the door. They can keep the coaches happy for now, but they probably will erode your long-term impact. If you're doing meaningless work day in, day out, that's probably the level that people are going to expect from you in the future. And so if you want to be an excellent sports scientist, then think big and bold about your long-term future and your future worth, and start investing in that and putting a filter on kind of everything you're doing so that it makes things better for you. Right, that's the end of my 10. I hope that has been useful for you. I'd be interested to know which ones you struggle with, ones that you actually feel you do quite well. If you've got any questions now, if anybody's got any questions that they'd like to ask, I'm going to pop the chat open for a moment. So give me a few moments just to flick across and see if I can find that. Here we are. So I promised you also, if you are interested in digging a little bit deeper with our apply courses, at the moment we've got £50 off the apply courses using a code that's around on social media at the moment. For the next 48 hours after this webinar, if you wanted to do one of those courses, you can get £100 off. And you need this code, webinar100, and that code is active now. So if that's something that's interesting for you, then jump on to the website, the different courses that are available. It's only the applied professional courses that are available for that discount. But specifically for you, you've dialed into the webinar, you've made time. This is just me trying to positively support you. If you wanted to dig a bit deeper, then you could take that advantage, and that code's going to be available for 48 hours from today. All right, so good. I am going to see if, I don't think we've got any questions coming in just yet. If anybody's would like to pose a question, I'm happy to stay around for a few more minutes and see if I can answer any questions for people. I'll just put that code in the... And you'll find all of the courses there. Wheat Tech, thank you for sharing all these useful tips. You're very welcome, Co. I hope they are. I've seen you're in the community, so great for you to connect today, and looking forward to connecting with you in the future. So great that you're already signed up for those courses. All right, so I can't see any questions coming in, and so I'll take that as, oh no, I can see someone's typing. 2 more minutes. Yeah, how did you get on tonight? What stuck with you? What made you cringe and think, I don't do that very well? Maybe you could let me know. All right. I'm going to say that that is that, and there are no questions coming in. So, wishing you all the best. Um, take note. Oh, hang on, we got a question, Ryan. How do you expect AI will influence sports science? Yeah, good question, Ryan. There's a nice little discussion I've had with Sean Allen, who is the tutor on our performance analysis course, and we discuss tech, and that's in the podcast coming out tomorrow, Sport Champions podcast. So I think I don't think actually the last 5 or 10 years have been hugely different to how it's actually going to go forward in the future. So if I was working with an athlete and I needed to, what would be a good example? If I needed to support them with beetroot juice supplementation before an endurance race because I wanted to try and improve their running economy or their efficiency, and I've forgotten what the protocol is. I don't think it's going to be too different if I'm engaging with AI to be able to find out what the optimum is. I can Google it, and 5 minutes later, I've got the knowledge. So the knowledge is all out there. It's how you bring it to life. So another good example would be I developed a warm-up strategy for middle distance running, and it took me years to actually modify the program that athletes were using before they competed at Olympic Games. That's because there's a real sensitivity and a nervousness about them changing what they do just before they're about to go out to compete in the biggest race of their lives. And so is AI or Chat GPT going to resolve that for them? Are they going to sit there and say, what's the optimum warm-up for me before I go out to an Olympic final? And are they going to trust it? And so I think the fundamental activities that we might be engaged in day to day, training analysis, number crunching, analysing surveys, for example, I don't think we're going to be doing much of that. And so anyone whose basis of work is basically number crunching, a bit of a data monkey in that sense, I don't think that's going to be valued work in the future. So automated processes that will do a lot of that work. And so if you're not necessarily creating insight, pitching it in a way that's unique to those circumstances, responding to the trust and to the dynamics and the pressures that people are under, and being creative in your solutions, because I don't see that AI is going to be solving innovation and creativity in our working lifetime. Maybe it will, but certainly that lateral thought and drawing from different diverse fields has got a wealth of material that you could innovate with and get ahead. So if you're doing the basics too, if you're doing some of the sort of mundane work, maybe you probably don't need to be. Maybe you probably that's not going to be happening in the future. And be interested to hear what you think, Ryan. Jamie, thank you, Steve. One of my takeaways: I need to practice dealing with conflict head-on. I'm a postgraduate student and experience conflict often in group tasks with varying opinions. Yeah, and so notice also it's having a difficult conversation and for it to go well. Now, when you're leading and managing people in high-performance teams, you deal with this a lot. And so my thought is that actually what you need to be doing is thinking about their long-term development. You need to be helping them to succeed. And so if I miss an opportunity to give somebody some really high-quality feedback because they messed up or they annoyed somebody else or they intimidated or belittled somebody, if I don't do that in the future, if I don't help that person, then I'm letting their future practice down. So it's a difficult one to do, and certainly my heart rate has gone up when I've had to have those difficult conversations. But I do them because I don't want to let that person down in the future. And so you will find that people will try to give you feedback and it won't be effective. Try and listen to what those messages are if you're receiving some of that conflict. So I think deal with it, and then you get a bronze medal. actually say, look, you made me feel rubbish, or whatever it is you need to say. The silver medal is if you can say, well, you made me feel like this. So the bronze medal is you point at somebody. This is all on YouTube, by the way. This is all about having a difficult conversation. I'll just have a look on my channel for this. And we've also got more in the community if you're part of it, Jamie. So bronze medal is you made me feel rubbish, and so you're pointing the finger. The silver medal is actually I felt like this when you said that. So you're talking about your response to it. And then gold, if you can, as much as possible, try and keep it in neutral terms. So talk about it, this happened, it occurred to me today. It seemed as though, and so if you're keeping it in neutral terms, then you can be quite objective about it. Hope that's helped, Jamie. Michaeli, how are we doing, Michaeli? Great to see you. Do you think we can create more impact through non-technical skills or through hardcore science? It depends what you want to do. If you want a Nobel Prize, I don't necessarily know that you need non-technical skills to do that. I can see a lot of academics, with due respect to academics, who are not emotionally intelligent, but they excel in their field because they are pushing the boundary of knowledge and know-how, the epistemology of what they're doing, but they're not necessarily thinking about what's my impact, what's the lasting legacy, and so there's a famous quote here: is people forget what you said, but they don't forget how you made them feel, and I think that's part of it, really. That I've seen over the years great scientists, scientific types, excel in applied sport, and I've seen emotionally intelligent people, the sort of social nudging them, look, coach, I think we need to back off today, because they are close to them. If you can do both, then there's no doubt you're going to excel. And it's having the dial of reading people and a situation to know what to put in front of them versus back off. And I think that ability to read people and dynamics and steer it so that the group is more productive as a consequence, that probably is going to yield much more. That would be my long answer. Michaela again, of course, we need both, but in your experience, which of the two sports scientists lack more? So here's a quote, Michaela. I had from a performance director, multiple Olympic gold medal winning performance director, and he said to me, I would take 20% less IQ for just 10% more EQ. So intelligence quotient and emotional quotient. And he was willing to trade less of the book smarts and I know this, that, and the other, for just a little bit more around team and dynamic and social awareness and emotional quality. And I think that's damning for our educational roots and damning for us as a profession if coaches and athletes are saying, I'd rather not have sports science support because I can't work with them. So yeah, I think it probably does prioritize emotional intelligence on top of, because everybody's got the degrees, everybody's got the master's degrees these days, and that's what we try and do in the course is having that craft skill of being able to truly make an impact. So just a reminder then, if you are interested in those courses, then webinar 100, that'll give you £100 off. That's 48 hours for that. I hope that helps in some way. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining tonight. I've really appreciated the connection, the questions. I hope it's been useful. I'll be emailing the replay to you over the next 24 hours. So all the best, everyone, and take care.